We'll start with this. TPMA. We are a national leader in driving transformative workforce, education, and economic development. For over 36 years, we've partnered with communities and organizations to translate complex data into actionable strategies that create real, measurable impact. We're currently doing work from Humboldt County, California to Charlotte, North Carolina, and everywhere in between. Wondering about Smart Take with TPMA? Well, we get it. You're busy, we're busy. That's why we created a webinar series that respects your time, delivering the essential industry insights you need in a quick 30 minutes. Good afternoon. I'm Zachary Rice. I have 20 plus years of experience in economic development, government affairs, and public policy. I consider myself a recovering bureaucrat. I previously worked at Indiana Housing and Community Development. There, I was proud to secure funding for some really impactful initiatives like the Blight Elimination Program, Housing First, and even launched the Midwest Housing Finance Collaborative. You're also going to hear from Aaron Finley. He is a certified member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. He's leading dozens of projects in 13 states. Basically, he's our housing guru, leading nationwide efforts in housing and community development to build stronger, more resilient communities. You also hear from Ashley Sharpley, a vital member of Aaron's housing initiatives. She has a strong foundation in business, economics, and public policy analysis. She plays a key role in our research and engagement efforts. So, how did we get here? Let's talk about that for a second. To understand how YIGBY came into focus for us, it started with our team's commitment to finding innovative solutions. So every few weeks, we dedicate time to discussing impactful ideas shaping our field. Earlier this year, we encountered Rachel Cohen's article in Vox highlighting standout housing policies from 2024. So YIGBY was one of them. Immediately, YIGBY resonated. It directly addresses many of the housing challenges that we're facing locally in 13 states right now. And it has a significant national potential and growing federal interest. So what began as a, insightful discussion between peers rapidly evolved into a blog post, into this webinar as well. And the evidence of growth is pretty compelling. Since then, we've tracked, I don't know, 40 some articles in the last 2 years about the YIGBY movement. I mean, so first I wanted to focus on the legislative support from across the states. So we saw California in 2023 introduce what's SB4, which is streamlining affordable housing on religious land. That's inspired states like New York, Colorado, Virginia, Hawaii, all to start considering similar legislation. So that's showcasing a trend throughout the states. We're also seeing local initiatives and projects. So we're seeing projects from San Diego, California to Boise, Idaho to Fairfax, Virginia, which we'll talk about a little bit today. And that's demonstrating YIGBY's adaptability and real world impact. Third, the national potential is immense. I mean, it's suggested like tens of thousands of underutilized church properties nationwide could be repurposed. I mean, that's representing a vast opportunity to address the housing crisis. And finally, increase in federal interest. So in March of 2024, Senator Brown of Ohio introduced the Yes in God's Backyard Act, which aims at providing some federal support and resources to these very projects. So we're seeing clear momentum at the state, local, and even on the federal level. So let's take a look really quickly at the agenda. Obviously, I just went over the welcome and introduction. We also want to cover understanding the housing crisis, introducing YIGBY, YIGBY in action, which is a case study, then making YIGBY work, and then some key takeaways and next steps. Before we hop in, I want to make sure the chat is disabled, so please put all of your questions into the Q&A, and you can ask them at any point. Don't hold on to them, just throw them in there as soon as you think of them. With that said, I'm going to throw it over to Aaron Finley.
All right, thank you so much, Zach. Really appreciate it. I probably don't have to spend a lot of time explaining that affordable housing is a challenge, and really we're at crisis levels all over the country, no matter how you slice it, whether you're looking at cost burden, you're looking at the incidence of people experiencing homelessness, the barrier to home ownership, and even the kind of rate at which housing costs are outpacing incomes for a lot of the communities that we work with. We know that housing is a challenge. Finding affordable housing is a challenge. Developing affordable housing is a challenge. And there's just a lot of ways that we want to try to go about addressing this since there is no single solution, no panacea, if you will. So this is what brings us, as Zach mentioned, to what everybody's kind of collectively calling the YIGBY movement. This stems from the fact that there are a lot of churches and faith-based organizations that have properties that have significant land holdings. As you see here, whether those are parking lots, those are underused buildings, in some cases, faith-based organizations or churches are actually closing in some cases. And so there really is an opportunity to see about maybe utilizing that land in pursuit, in many cases, of the mission of these faith-based organizations, and also really taking advantage of, in some cases, loosened restrictions on how that land can be used for faith-based organizations or FBOs. So, what is YIGBY? Here it is, yes, in God's backyard. It's kind of a play, I guess, if you will, on the NIMBY movement that you might have heard about, expressing opposition to affordable housing in many cases. Then you had YIMBY, yes, in my backyard, and here we are at yes, in God's backyard. As you can see here, it's a movement that encourages FBOs to utilize that underused land to develop affordable housing and helping to work with the community to address affordable housing crises that we're seeing all over the country. So, we already talked a little bit about why faith-based organizations have a role that they can play here, but first off, and we mentioned it, there are lands that are in possession of these FBOs. They have opportunities. I know we encountered a lot of them. That there's really a lot of just kind of grass and open pastures and underutilized parking lots and things like that. So there's a good opportunity there. These FBOs often, in almost all cases, hold that position, having community trust, buy-in for some of their efforts with community members as well. And as I mentioned, a lot of the missions that come from these organizations and are utilized to kind of drive forward what they hope to accomplish in the community fits in really well with the notion of providing affordable housing to members of the community. So, but it doesn't just kind of work within those. It's obviously, of course, benefits for the community. Ultimately, the goal here is to increase affordable housing options, period. We need more housing. We need more affordable housing. And to the extent that all community partners can be involved in that, that's going to be critical to helping address these problems. But it also leads to stronger, more inclusive communities, and also access in many cases to those amenities or support services. In some cases, that the faith-based organizations are already actively involved in providing some of those services, bringing a lot of those things together. Ideally, also bringing some financial sustainability potentially for some of these faith-based organizations through their land use, as we talked about, fulfillment of the mission, but also just positive community engagement, really being partners with the community and making sure we're working together to meet a lot of these needs. So now that we've kind of introduced YIGBY, we've been really excited to work with the community in the city of Fairfax, Virginia, and spend a lot of time talking with members at the Fairfax Presbyterian Church who have been through, in the last number of years, going through this process of trying to utilize some of the land there on the church property in a similar fashion what we're talking about today. To talk a little bit more about that, I'm going to hand it over to Ashley Sharpley.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to talk to you all about this. If you look in the top right corner, you'll see a picture of a parking lot. That's where these 10 townhomes are going to be built. When we talk about, excess land, it's having spent some time at Fairfax Presbyterian, it's a pretty large parking lot and stuff, and they didn't have a use for it. They might have in years past, but that time has gone. And they already have things at at the church like a preschool and daycare and elder facilities. They're also a uh, a shelter during the colder months in the city. So when you talk about kind of having already that buy-in and that connection with the community, they had that. And they decided, I think back in 2018, that they wanted to start looking at what being an affordable housing developer or provider would look like. So as you can see, you kind of see the rundown of the what the townhomes are going to look like right there. There'll be 10 in total. They're going to be 4-bedroom, 3.5 baths. Each one's going to have an attached garage. These are really nice homes. 8 of them are going to be sold through Habitat. And the other 2 are going to be sold to an organization called Homestretch. They're a nonprofit that offers supportive housing to women and families exiting homelessness. And those 2, as well as some additional partners, are really what was key for Fairfax Presbyterian in going through this process, because they realized pretty quickly that their area of expertise was not in home development, right? But they were able to partner with organizations who very much have that expertise. Originally, I believe they were only planning on choosing one, singular partner. By the end of the process, they found that it made the most sense to go with all 3 that they've received proposals from. So the 2 I already mentioned were Habitat and Homestretch. Both of them are going to be responsible for a portion of those townhomes. But they also partnered with Home Aid, National Capital Region, to aid in some of the development and financing. In addition to these 3 partners that the church worked with, you'll see there's a whole other list there. And these organizations helped with financing, they helped with design, they helped with marketing. A huge part of the process for Fairfax Presbyterian was getting that community engagement and that community buy-in. They had multiple public events that they held over the years, inviting people to come and ask questions and better understand what their goals were, what they were trying to accomplish in the community, and how they were going to go about doing it. I also know that they had a really high bar set for the congregation itself in terms of buy-in. I think the first time they kind of held a vote to see if they would go through with the project, they were at about 70%, which was enough, or 75%, which was enough to pass. But they waited, they did some more community organizing and meetings and things like that. They ended with over 90% buy-in from their congregation, which has led to, a much smoother process in the community. So when we look at kind of what the key ingredients for success in these kinds of programs or these kinds of processes for churches and faith-based organizations, we're looking for that strong vision and commitment from the organization, effective partnerships with experienced developers and service providers being really key, community engagement and support, like you saw like with Fairfax Presbyterian, flexible and creative financing solutions. Not every situation is going to look the same. They're working with different resources. And so again, that's where those partnerships kind of come into play. And finally, navigating regulatory and zoning processes, which can be challenging. I think I'm going to pass it back to Erin to talk about what making it work looks like.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, just a quick kind of overview of a lot of things that Ashley talked about there. One of the things that we have found in speaking with members of the church and who were a part of the process to kind of steer this ship through some, at times, I think, choppy waters. I think that they would be okay with me saying that. Essential elements for success. It's really a strong vision at the beginning. In this case, as Ashley mentioned, they had a lot of support to start with. By the end, they had received even more from their congregation, but there are obstacles that kind of can occur along the way. And so having that clear vision from the start is really critical to kind of keep things moving forward and make sure everybody's aligned on the mission for a project like this. We mentioned partnerships, absolutely critical. The churches are not housing developers, and so make sure that there are good partners to help navigate a lot of those efforts, but also to navigate components like community engagement, which is the next item here. We talked with an individual who helped put together a letter writing campaign and make sure there were people at city council sessions that did support these efforts. So a lot of the community engagement was really critical to make sure that the community was on board. And if there were voices of opposition out there, that there would also be plenty of evidence that there was also a lot of support within the community as well. Navigating the regulatory environment can be difficult and can be different in each case that we're looking at with a kind of a YIGBY development, if you will. Another TPMAer and I attended a session very specifically just about YIGBY and navigating regulatory environments for these efforts at the National Planning Conference from the APA just a few months ago. And we heard lots of stories about those efforts and what the kind of those obstacles can be and how to circumvent them. One, of course, of those obstacles is, as in with all development efforts, financial planning. There's quite a bit of finances that need to be kind of pulled together and funding opportunities and sources, but also accounting for that risk and those other things that might pop up along the way. Things like, delayed timelines, as any developer can tell you, that alone is a financial challenge and requires quite a bit of navigating as well. Well, and sure enough, that's how TPMA can help. So there are services. We have been really kind of tracking a lot of the research and best practices in this space. We have had some partners that we've met with and had them share their best practices with us. And we already obviously talked quite a bit about Glebe View and Fairfax here today. So what you see in front of you are ways we can help the process, whether those are feasibility studies, any sort of project planning and guidance, navigating partnerships. We've got a lot of experience kind of putting together coalitions and helping to identify partners and keep things moving in the right direction. Navigating those regulatory processes, as we mentioned, and of course, financial pieces, all things that are really critical to this piece and ways that we would be able to help or answer any questions that you might have about them. With that, I'll hand it back to Zach Rice.
Woo! So, just in a few minutes, we've explored how YIGBY offers a powerful solution to the housing crisis. The cool thing is, unlike traditional approaches, YIGBY leverages a unique and readily available resource, the underutilized land of faith-based organizations. So this isn't just about building more housing, it's about building community. The potential of YIGBY is transformative. Imagine more inclusive, equitable communities where everyone has a place to call home. And then imagine faith-based organizations actually thriving and becoming even more vital centers of support and connection. This is the promise of YIGBY. I mean, it's a win-win solution that benefits communities, institutions, and individuals alike. It's a vision of the future where our housing solutions are as inspired as they are practical, and it's a future that we can build together. Now, with that said, I think some of the things that we want to provide you, obviously, YIGBY.org is a great resource to check out online. And we have many resources that are available. But first, we hope that you found the Smart Take insightful. We made it on time. We still have time for questions. We do have a blog post that we have out there dealing with this. We are currently developing a white paper on YIGBY that will explore some best practices and challenges and solutions in greater detail. We're also exploring a panel discussion that could be a little bit more in depth, focused on overcoming obstacles in the faith-based housing development area. So how can you stay informed? I mean, if you're interested in the white paper or on the panel discussion, please let us know. Reach out to us and tell us that you're interested. If you need resources or guidance, contact us to learn how TPMA can help your organization explore YIGBY opportunities. All right. We made it. Now it is time. We have a few minutes left for some Q&A. So bear with me when I go over and let's see what questions we have. And while I do that, the first question we're going to ask, who is typically driving these partnerships? The city, county, the church, or a nonprofit?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it really gets right to the heart of some of these efforts. I think it's really important to have the buy-in from the faith-based organization. I think it's really critical to have them be a centerpiece throughout the process. Of course, as we mentioned, they're not going to, very rarely are they going to be able to navigate it on their own. But we do think it's really important, where possible, to have them really be the leaders of this kind of coalition, have to be a forward-facing partner in this, and for a lot of the reasons that we already talked about, which is already having the support and buy-in with the community, the relationships of being an active member, and also because it's their land. We want to make sure everybody's kind of all on the same page and rowing in the same direction. They seem to be the kind of natural choice. But again, there will be a lot of opportunities to build robust partnerships to get these done and push them across the finish line. So it will take, in almost all cases, quite a coalition to get it together.
Yeah. Have you seen any YIGBY projects that incorporate social services, recovery, workforce training?
Yeah, we have, and I think as Ashley mentioned, some kinds of services are already taking place in the Glebe View, the Fairfax Presbyterian example that we talked about here. In order for success to really kind of be maximized, I guess, if you will, especially when we think about transitional housing and housing for individuals and families experiencing homelessness. Wraparound support services are really critical. It's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons, as we've discussed, in some cases, faith-based organizations are good options to lead these efforts. Ashley, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in there and talk about some of the things that you've seen at Fairfax Presbyterian related to this.
Definitely, yeah. Like I mentioned, two of those units are going to Homestretch, an organization that specifically, works with families exiting homelessness. And so that's one of their priorities. We found a lot of times those are the best suited organizations to be involved there, because those wraparound services are so critical to families not only attaining but retaining their housing over a long period of time. So absolutely, and everything Aaron said as well.
Are there developers that are actively seeking this type of partnership? How do we find them?
Yeah, great question. I think that as a lot of these efforts are still kind of in their, innovative thinking stages, although certainly there are some that have already been taking place around the country. I'm not aware of any affordable housing developers that are actively seeking these out. That doesn't mean they don't exist. They very likely might, but I think we'll probably start to see a little bit more of those as developers start to see success in a lot of these cases as well. And we start to understand some of the regulatory environment when some of those things get finalized and we move forward and there's best practices out there. As we all know, developers are not huge fans of risk. So I think there are a lot of opportunities to probably reach out to developers, show a good concept, or work with them on developing a solid concept. Already having some level of support from the community probably also helps that as well. As far as identifying developers, there's a lot of opportunities and organizations. I believe that local housing authority, local government probably have opportunities and lists of developers they work with, affordable housing developers. You can find those lists, online. Also, engaging with your community organizations who have done some similar kinds of projects can help put you in touch with some affordable housing developers.
I think also with that is that uh, while there are some churches or faith-based organizations like Fairfax Presbyterian that had both they had the will, they had the land, and they had some of that kind of capital and financing to get them going. A lot of organizations don't have all three of those. Some have land, some have capital, some have the will, some don't. And so we're seeing in a lot of cases there's interest within churches, but they're saying, well, we would need another organization, another church, maybe a church that neighbors us or an organization that neighbors us to come on board before we can start looking to actively develop the land. And so there's some kind of pre-organization that needs to happen that I'm sure developers aren't necessarily looking to jump into. So some of that that has to happen first.
Looks like we have,
Good question.
yeah,
We
there's
have
one
two.
more back in the Q&A, Zach. I just want to make sure you saw it there.
Yeah. So, what's a good first way to introduce this concept to community leaders?
Great question. Absolutely. I think a couple of situations, I guess, might apply here. When we think about community leaders, I guess it depends on who we're talking about. If we're thinking about elected officials, I think it's possible to maybe already have a little bit of a sense about what level of interest or appetite there is in kind of pursuing some of these developments. If you're in a community that, is very interested in some new innovative ideas and approaching some of these challenges head on, I think it's a really good opportunity to reach out and gauge levels of support. But I also think that this is where having the church or faith-based organization, synagogue, mosque, um, be in some ways kind of leading these efforts. That's one of the things that can leverage a lot of good opportunities, a lot of good partnerships, a lot of good work in the community over the years. So I think leading with those kinds of situations where trust already exists is going to be a really critical component to make sure you start off on the right foot.
So, we have 2 minutes left. Do we want to answer, are 3D printed houses a good option for these projects?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think that the answer for now is possibly. One of the things that when we think about 3D printed houses, we think about manufactured housing, anything like this. The first thing we need to think about is where there might need to be any changes to existing regulations, design, zoning, those types of things. So that's one of the questions we're going to want to answer here. I also think that in a lot of cases, some of these, maybe like YIGBY in its own right, are still at the early stages of really how we're going to use things like container homes or something like this to really help meet the affordable housing challenges and address this crisis all over the country. I don't think it's a terrible idea to try to think about how we might bring two newish kind of innovative strategies together. The only thing I would worry a little bit about, and obviously things like 3D printed homes, containers, manufacturing units could bring the cost down, and that, to produce these units, to do that development, that could be helpful. Of course, as funding can be scarce. But what I would be hesitant to do is um, risk throwing a wrench into the process, by bringing in something that maybe doesn't have the same buy-in, for instance, among local community leaders, or isn't permitted through zoning, or maybe doesn't have the same levels of support that are really critical to pulling these off. So I love the idea, and I hope that we'll keep an eye out for best practices to see some of that happening.
You ran long. We're a minute over. We apologize, everyone. We hope that you found this Smart Take session insightful with TPMA. And please reach out to us with any comments, concerns, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.